What's up, ProGuides family? How you guys doing today? My name is Nathan Ng, and if you guys been watching for a while, then you might recall a video of ours called 8 aiming secrets that almost nobody uses, where we went over a technique to be more consistent, namely creating a solid A, B, and C game. By utilizing this tool, you can be more consistent on the scoreboard even when you're having a bad day. Before we get into that though, it's time for our question of the day. Today's question being, what is the spot that you feel the most comfortable defending? For me personally, it has to be B apartments on Mirage. When I was first starting out, I'd really like to rely on taking favorable fights and not having to use my aim as much. That's when I learned to play B apartments and started watching lots of demos for it. I think to this day, even though I don't play there as much, I still feel almost certain of an easy hold, because you only really need to play intelligently and then just use your utility wisely. What about you though? Where do you feel the most confident? Enough about that, let's go ahead and talking about how you can become more consistent. First, we're going to be talking about what A, B, and C games are and what they entail, and then we're going to be going over how you should approach all of them. After that, we're going to be going over how you can work on them, and then lastly, we're going to be discussing how you can make sure that you're playing your best as often as possible. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Sometime back, LEG was on DDK Talks Esports podcast. They at some point started discussing consistency and how LEG can be such an incredibly consistent player. LEG went over this technique that is not just a thing in CS, but in all sports in general, and that's the A, B, and C games. He mentioned how he'd recognize it as early as possible, what kind of game that he was having, so that he could play accordingly and then just adjust. Psycho, a player for Godsent, also used to play for the Mouse Sports and listened to his podcast himself, and it really got him thinking. Ever since then, he decided to research more on the topic, and then he made it his goal to become the most consistent player that he could possibly be. If you look at his stats for the last 12 months, I think it's pretty fair to say that he's been relatively successful. Since Psycho had so much success with this, he had decided to bring it back in the podcast and then talk about the main subject with DDK. I'd highly recommend listening to it because it's very enjoyable and they talk about it in great depth. Regardless though, we're going to be doing our best to summarize it and then explain it in the most practical way possible so that you can start using it today. Firstly, what exactly are the A, B, and C games? Well, that's quite straightforward actually. A games are the games when you're playing your best. You're hitting nutty shots left and right and your reads are on point, and in general, you're able to carry your team. Psycho explained it by mentioning how at one of his A games, he was able to out-op Simple, one of the, if not the best player the Counter-Strike Global Offensive has ever seen. But he can also be seen on ProGuides.com where he actually teaches the course. Anyway, so that's some truly impressive stuff right there. If you're playing your B game, you're not hitting as many shots, but you're not exactly missing either. You're playing relatively average and you just do your best job, but that's it, nothing more and nothing less. If you're having a terrible day, you're probably playing your C game. The game just feels off. You're likely whiffing easy shots and therefore missing crucial kills. Your timings are off and then you're just fumbling nades. Suddenly you forgot how to smoke CT. Perhaps you're not even communicating anymore. Whenever you're having a bad game, it doesn't only show on the server but in real life. Or like Psycho said, you can tell the player's having a bad game or an off game just by looking at them. You don't even need to see their scoreboard. Now that you understand what A, B, and C games are, I think it's time that we get into how you could approach them. Starting off with the A game, if you're having an A game, it's important that you play like it. When you're having an A game, you should be able to play really aggressively, always taking fights and going with your gut. You have the ability to hit 6 shots and win fights against players you normally don't have any business beating. It's very likely that you are the only, if not one of the only players on your team that is having such a game, so you should be abusing it to its full potential. The reason that you shouldn't just play standard is because if you do that, you'll be a lot less impactful and when you could have just literally carried the game. Let's say that you normally enjoy lurking in Palace on A site Mirage. Maybe normally you would like to just wait for a push or a mistake from your opponents, but if you're having an A game, go ahead and just wreck them instead. If you're not playing your average B game but instead your A game, you'll want to switch things up. Now, you want to wait until you feel the timing is right and then swing on the guy playing on site. Since you're hitting absolutely everything, you basically have A site for free, and all you have to do is hit that one little headshot. As soon as you get that, you decided to run into CT and look for another fight. You get there so fast that the CTs aren't even able to rotate, and then you hide in CT spawn and kill both B players rotating, catching them both off guard big time. If you can tell that you are in your A game, then you're able to hit whatever shot is possible, so you should be making plays like this. All your team has to do is walk into an empty site and then win a 4v2 after plan, and that should be pretty doable, but you know, it's CSGO, sometimes you get disappointed. If you're having a really good game, your goal should be taking initiative and carry your teammates to an easy victory, not just to do your normal job. Your B game is when you should be doing that though, so let's go ahead and get into that. When you're having your average B game, you should keep it stable and do whatever your team can reasonably expect of you. When you're having your B game, don't feel responsible to do the same insane plays to win your team rounds. That should be for your A game. Instead, your goal should be as consistent and standard as possible. Try to minimize your mistakes, play reasonable spots, and then play your standard angles. Unlike your A game, your goal here isn't really to hard carry the game, but rather to have a solid foundation allowing the A game players to really shine because they know that they can rely on you. Basically, when you're having your B game, your job is just to do, well, your job. Do what's expected of you, nothing more, nothing less. Now, when you're having a bad day and you're playing your C game, things change again. Now, you shouldn't even be thinking about carrying your team. Your goal and your number one priority should just to be not dead weight and hopefully have some value to the team. Everyone has bad games, and there is honestly no shame in that at all. We've all been James Bond before, and that's okay. What you realize though is that once you become 007, you have to now deal with the consequences. If you feel like you can't even kill a guy sticking the bomb without a defuse kit that's standing completely out in the open, then you gotta play accordingly. So if that's the case, you should focus on how to stay alive in order to allow plenty of time for your teammates to rotate. Also play for your teammates. Set them up for an easier kill or get a multi-kill by allowing yourself to be bait for them. Honestly, there is no shame in baiting yourself. Focus on maintaining your communication and thinking about the plays that you can do as a team, and they just might be able to win the round. Additionally, you should try to avoid 1v1 duels as much as possible instead of waiting for a teammate to come help you out. And God forbid you try to make these plays without your team alone. And well, you're probably gonna get killed, which is not exactly what we want because now you're at a disadvantage. Now that you know about all the different games, we're going to be talking about how to work on them. If you're going to be doing this right, you're going to be having to develop 3 different playstyles. Theoretically, your B game will most likely be the most developed because it's your average. And if it's not, you're going to want to just develop a main playstyle that is stable as it can possibly be. To do this, I'd advise watching some demos of players like Crims and then Device, or you can just go ahead and head over to ProGuides.com and get a coaching session and get started for yourself. By getting a coach to watch one of your demos with you, you can go over your decision-making process and then discuss what are good and bad habits. From my experience, it really does help to get another pair of eyes on your play. Like we said, your goal shouldn't be to carry your team, but just to do your job and maybe do a little bit extra. You don't have to make any ridiculous plays here because your job is just to be the foundation. Creating a good A game and especially C game though is a little bit more difficult. When it comes to our A game playstyle, generally just be more aggressive. The more aggressive, the better. Your goal should probably be to get to as many aim fights as possible, as you'll be winning most of them anyway. When it comes to watching demos, I'd say watch players like Stewie2K, Kerrigan, Fer, or Chris J. But honestly, you're not really playing at a professional level, so you can have more freedom. So we don't really have to adhere to what the pro players do. Instead, you can just kind of do what you feel will have the best results. Therefore, we advise experimenting with all kinds of different aggressive plays, or different angles, or different pushes. Alright, lastly, we're going to be talking about how to improve our C games. Consistency is really hard to achieve, and there are certain things that you just can't make consistent. If you're going to be aiming like a bot one day, then that's just something that's going to happen, and although you can make it occur less often, we'll go ahead and get into how later. You will never be able to aim like you do on your best days. There are other things that you can do to be more consistent though, and we already talked about communication diminishing when you start feeling upset because you're missing shots. Well, that is something that you can get rid of, but it's gonna need work. If you're having a C game, take your focus off of hitting shots that you won't likely hit regardless, but instead fully focus on communicating and helping your teammates. You may not be able to hit the most nutty flicks out there, but with practice and the right mindset, you can always be that passionate voice in the team, giving callouts energetically, and then being a positive eternal flame. But don't let that be confused with flaming. Positive flame. Also, being bait for your team, although never is fun, is something that you can do consistently. If you're having your C game, your focus there should almost be one of two things: keeping strong communication up and then playing for your teammates. What really defines a good CS player comes down to how good their C game is developed. Everyone has their good games, but what really matters is when you are at your worst and how you react in those situations. Alright, we're going to be talking about how to get your A game as much as possible. Consistency is hard, and you might want to replicate that one good game that you had, as we always want to play our best, and if we know that we've done better before, then we're always trying to get back to that level. To effectively do that though, you need to start referencing what happened before that game. Psycho nowadays actually has a notebook that he keeps with him to mark down anything that's happened before his games. He mentioned questions like, when did I wake up? When did I have breakfast? What did I have for breakfast? Did I skip breakfast? On a lot of breakfast questions. Did I have a shower before the game or even a bath? Psycho did realize that the minor things like that did affect him. Other questions that could be considered were things like, did I warm up? How long did I warm up for? Did I watch a demo beforehand? Did I have any arguments with friends or families beforehand? He realized that those had a more significant impact on him, especially the latter, so he started avoiding any conversations that might result in arguments during match days. A lot of people don't feel like writing these things down, but in fact it is very important. In fact, it's not important just for CS, but in life. Writing these things down makes you more aware of what you're feeling and why you're feeling it. If we don't journal, we tend to just forget, or even if we don't, our memory often proves to be very biased. So we likely don't even remember what was truly important or relevant. Well guys, that's it for now. We know that there's a lot of things to take in right now and there's a lot of things that you can work on, but I hope this video really helped you out. If it did, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell to get more videos such as this. Also, make sure to check out ProGuides.com as we have coaches just for you. And if coaching isn't really your thing, go ahead and check out our courses. We have the one and only Simple taking the lead on that, so go ahead and check it out. With that all being said, I hope you guys are staying safe and healthy and have a wonderful day. Peace.